What's going on, guys? Tyler here from Audioholics Anonymous, and today I bring to you a wrong opinion video on Symphony X. Now, you may notice I'm doing this one by myself, as Logan is not here. Well, that's because him and I, after some discussion, decided that it would be better if I did this one on my own, but you can expect him to be back for future episodes. Alright, so let's just get right into it. As usual, we're going to go in chronological order, starting with Symphony X's debut album, Symphony X. Just going to place this here in the B for easy viewing. Alright, Symphony X's debut album. It's not a bad album. Despite what a lot of people will tell you about this album, it's very much like Dream Theater's first record. It's not a bad album. It's just that the singer that's on the album isn't the singer people know the band for. People know Symphony X, Russell Allen. People know Dream Theater, James LaBrie. Well, I would say that Rod Tyler, who's the singer in the debut album, is pretty bad for this band. I don't really like him. I think he just doesn't fit. Raging Seasons is a good song. Masquerade's a good song. Absinthe and Rue is my favorite. Shades of Grey is really, that's the song where his vocals really start to grate on me. I hate that song. I think that song is absolutely terrible. In fact, I would go as far as to say it's probably the worst song this band ever wrote, or probably will ever write. For those reasons, I am going to place it in the C tier. It's not as good as the rest, but it's not a bad album. It's still, I would say, worth your time. If you're into the band and you like the Russell Allen albums, which is literally everything else here, this isn't a bad one to go back to. Next, we have The Damnation Game, which is right here. So The Damnation Game is the first album that Russell Allen was singing on. Rod Tyler, I forget if he quit or was fired, but either way, he left the band, and they found Russell Allen, and this is the first album that he sang on, as I said. And this album is really just a huge improvement on Symphony X's debut album. I think the songs are better written, they're more memorable, they're certainly better executed, because Russell Allen is a fantastic metal vocalist. Probably, maybe not my favorite, but definitely one of my favorites, for sure. You know, you got The Damnation Game, you got Dress to Kill, The Masterpiece, Edge of Forever, The Haunting, and of course, Winter's Dream Part 1 and 2. This is just a straight-up great sophomore album. Huge improvement over the first one. So for that reason, I am actually going to put it here in the B category. Next, we have The Divine Wings of Tragedy. Now, this album, you want to talk improvement? From debut to sophomore, this is huge improvement from the sophomore to the third album. The junior album, I guess. I don't know. It's a masterpiece, straight up. I don't even need to explain to you how amazing this album is, because if you know Symphony X, you know how great this album is. Of Sins and Shadows starts the record. What a heavy, amazingly written song. Sea of Lies is a legendary speed metal song with a solo that a lot of people consider to be one of Symphony X's greatest, and even one of the greatest solos in metal, period. Out of the Ashes, such a catchy and melodic song without being a full-on ballad. The Accolade is a progressive rock/metal masterwork. Pharaoh, heavy. Eyes of Medusa, heavy. Witching Hours, probably my least favorite song on the album, but that's really not a hit against it. It's still an amazing song, I just don't think it's as memorable as the other ones. And then, of course, we have the one everybody goes to this album for, the 20-some minute masterpiece, Divine Wings of Tragedy. Jesus, this song is fucking amazing. You know, you want to talk about Dream Theater's great epics? This is better than all of them, aside from maybe Change of Seasons. Maybe. This is just, it's so well written, it's so well performed, it doesn't even feel like a long song. Like, you'll get through it, and you'll be like, wow, it's over already? Even though it's 20-some minutes long. That's just how amazing that song is. There's so many references to classical musicians. There's a reference to Mars, there's a reference to Dies Irae, there's so many references. And the album ends on Candlelight Fantasia, which is a very underrated Symphony X song, and I actually really like it. It's one of my favorites from the album. So yeah, S rating, fucking amazing album. if I were to tell you how to get into Symphony X, I'd tell you to start here, because that is top shelf Symphony X. And they follow it up with another album that I think is absolutely great. Probably a bit of a step down, but it's still great. Twilight in Olympus. Now, this album, a lot of people don't like. I'm not entirely sure why. I think maybe just after the amazingness that was The Divine Wings of Tragedy, people just had higher hopes for this record. And this is a very different record from Divine Wings of Tragedy. It's definitely less heavy. I think it's more orchestral. I think, like, this is a very unique album in their discography. There's really nothing that sounds like it. Smoke and Mirrors, oh, there's one of the best songs they ever wrote. You know, Church of the Machine's a great song. Sonata, In the Dragon's Den, But then you got Through the Looking Glass, part 1, 2, and 3, which is one of my favorite Symphony X songs. Just absolutely great. And then, you know, you got Orion, The Hunter, The Relic, Lady of the Snow, another huge standout. This album is really damn good and very underrated. A lot of people don't like this, and I really I struggle to comprehend why that would be. So I'm going to place this in the A category. Alright, next in line we have V, the New Mythology Suite. And this is where I'm going to start losing people, because I don't really like this album. I know. I'm sorry. I don't really like it that much. I don't... It's not a bad album. Bird Serpent War is fun. I really like Egypt. What's the last song? Rediscovery, Part 2, The New Mythology. Communion of the Oracle's a good song. Evolution. I mean, the rest of the album just kind of loses me. I get this is their big concept album, but I don't really dig the concept, being like Egypt and Atlantis. Like, it's kind of weird switching between those two feels, and I don't know. It's just really aggressively not my thing. The album's definitely not bad, and I can understand why this would be somebody's top album. It's just not mine. I'm going to put this in C. Alright, so next we have The Odyssey. Now, this album is where the band really starts to not so much abandon their progressive metal roots, but start to drive away from those and add more traditional heavy metal elements. This album is heavy compared to the last one. Inferno, Unleash the Fire. What an amazing song that is. Wicked, holy shit, that song is heavy. And also, it has that section towards the end where Russell Allen shows off just how amazing his vocals are. God, gotta love it. Incantations of the Apprentice, really underrated song. Accolade 2, I'd say, is probably better than Accolade 1. King of Terrors, oh god, that's so heavy. The Turning, meh. But Awakenings, possibly the best song on the album, aside from the big boy, which is The Odyssey, the second huge 20-some minute song that this band wrote. And The Odyssey is not as good as The Divine Wings of Tragedy, in my opinion, but I can definitely understand why somebody would disagree with me, because it definitely holds its own. It's so well written, well performed, just like The Divine Wings of Tragedy. It doesn't grip me quite as much as that song does. However, it's still an S-rank album for me, though below Divine Wings of Tragedy. Also, it should be noted that they re-recorded Masquerade for this album as like a bonus track, and it is way better than the original recording, in my particular opinion. Paradise Lost is the next one on our list, and Paradise Lost, I think they're still kind of going in that direction of heavier rather than prog, and I think this album, they really took a bit of a longer stance in that than The Odyssey. Like, The Odyssey still had the title track, it still had Awakenings, it still had those progressive songs. Paradise Lost doesn't really have that. The longest song and most progressive song on here is The Walls of Babylon. And while that is a good song, it really doesn't have the progressive elements that The Odyssey does. That said, this is still a fucking amazing album. You got the starter, Set the World on Fire, which is a fan favorite to this day. They play live all the time. The heavy domination, very Pantera-esque. Serpent's Kiss, oh, that song has a fantastic riff. Paradise Lost, the song, is one of their most popular. It's a ballad, but it's really well done. Eve of Seduction is one of my favorites. I don't understand why more people don't talk about that one. It has a bit of a hair metal feel to it, especially in the choruses, but it's just so, like, it has that speed metal flair to it, which gives it a really unique sound. Of course, we have the Walls of Babylon, which is a fantastic song, definitely deserving of being one of the top-tier Symphony X songs. 7, am I the only one that doesn't like that song? A lot of people seem to love that song, but I think it's kind of hokey and cringy. Fire, ice! Like, what are you, D&D fans? I mean, I like power metal and like Rhapsody of Fire and stuff like that as much as the next guy, but it just feels cringy coming from Symphony X, man, at least in this song. The Sacrifice, I don't really remember much. It's alright. Revelation is probably my favorite song on the album. I really love that chorus. All in all, really well done album. Not quite as good as Twilight of Olympus, I think, but it's definitely, that's the wrong album, but it's definitely at least on the same playing field. I'd say an A. Alright, so next we have The Immortal Iconoclast. This is a heavy album. This is definitely their heaviest album, just hands down. The riffs, the way it's mixed, Russell Allen's vocals, all of it is just so incredibly heavy. And, I really don't like it as much as a lot of the other stuff. Nothing particularly against it, I guess. It's just not a huge favorite of mine. There's some songs on there I love. Electric Messiah comes to mind immediately. The title track. What's the song after the title track? End of Innocence, Dehumanized, Children of a Faceless God, Lords of Chaos, that's a great song. Reign in Madness is awesome. There's a lot of really awesome songs on this album. It just doesn't speak to me as much as most of the other albums, and for that reason I'm going to put it below Paradise Lost in the A category. Finally, we have Underworld. Holy crap, this album blew me away. After going through Iconoclast, I wasn't really sure what to expect, but oh my god, this album is just pure bliss. It has everything you love from the heavier era of Symphony X, like these 3 albums are. But it's also got, like, progressive elements. There's no super long song in this album, but Legend, Swan Song, Run with the Devil, especially To Hell and Back, all of those songs have very much like an earlier Symphony X feel, and even songs like Charon and Without You and Underworld, like those songs definitely wouldn't feel out of place, maybe, if they were mixed and had the same tones as the previous albums. Maybe like one of the heavier songs, but it's nothing like Iconoclast, with the exception of maybe Kiss of Fire, which kind of gets into black metal territory a little bit. This is going to be my favorite Symphony X album. I come back to it the most. I think it's the best written. I love the concept. It's not really a concept album, but most of the songs are about hell and like stories surrounding hell, such as like Dante's Inferno or like Orpheus Goes to Hell and stuff like that. Very, very amazing album. So that's my list, starting with the worst, Symphony X, then V, the Mythology Suite, the new Mythology Suite. I apologize. And then we have the Damnation Game in B. Then in A, we have Iconoclast. And then we have Paradise Lost. And then we have Twilight in Olympus. And in S rank, we have The Odyssey, Divine Wings of Tragedy, and my personal favorite Symphony X album, Underworld. So what are your guys' lists? What do you think of all these albums? Do you like Underworld as much as I do? Do you think it's one of their worst records? Maybe you think V is their best record? I would love to hear from you. But without further ado, I bid you adieu. Bye, guys, and I'll see you next time.